What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, March 5th, 2018, and boy, do we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And I'm going to start today's show with a little bit of a personal note. Yes, over this weekend, Clara and I finally managed to get a replacement car for our stolen and stripped Honda. We got this cute little Hyundai, and it seems to be in good shape, and we'll see what happens with that. My nephew has a Sonata with over 200,000 miles on it, and it's still running just fine. So hopefully that's a trend for the manufacturer. It's also not very high on the list of most commonly stolen cars, and it does have an alarm. So very, very glad for that. Now, here's the interesting part. The last time I bought a car was private party sale. Somebody that I've been working with, they were leaving the island. We bought the Honda from them, and we gave them the money. They gave us a bill of sale. We went down to the DMV and filed the change of title, and that was it. This time we wound up going to a dealership based on a recommendation from somebody at Claire's church, which did work out. We got a really good bargain on this thing. But unfortunately, because of all the laws, you're required to fill out all this amazing amounts of paperwork. For some reason, we have to sign a document saying that we will maintain insurance on the car, which, of course, we have insurance. That's why, we deal with the insurance company with a stolen Honda. And there are all these other documents here. We were even required by law to fill out a credit application, even though we paid cash for the vehicle. We didn't finance a single penny. Don't want the bankers getting a piece of the action out here. But the weirdest one of all was something called OFAC, which I'd never heard about before. It's the Office of Foreign Asset Control. Office of Foreign Asset Control. Something started back in the Bush administration to basically block all transactions to people who are blacklisted countries, blacklisted companies, blacklisted individuals. And we filled it out. It was sent on in electronically, and it came back with a hit on Claire. The 68-year-old choir director had a hit on her from the Office of Foreign Asset Control. And basically it was her name, and then underneath a whole bunch of aliases of like Ramon Martinez, not even close to her name, not even the right gender. And it took until this morning to get it all sorted out. And the red flag has been cleared. Claire is not a terrorist. She's a choir director. And here was the interesting part. The person at the other end of the phone was saying that the system is, to put it politely, oversensitive. And that 99 times out of 100, when you get a positive hit from the system, it is in fact incorrect. Now, setting aside the minor annoyance, the lesson to be learned here is all these government databases that are tracking us, NSA, FBI, CIA, whatever, they're worthless. They're completely worthless. It's just a way to funnel money to some crony who's got a computer company, like Obamacare. Remember that fiasco with their website? They're worthless. They cannot be relied on for any kind of hard information. What a waste of time, energy, and money just so the paranoid government can say, well, we're trying to do something about those angry Americans. I think they're operating under the theory that when the weight of the paperwork equals the weight of the car, you're allowed to drive off the lot. Because that certainly seems what it felt like, really. It was just huge. It took longer to go through that process than it did to pick out the car. All right, getting on to the news here. And again, a shout out and thanks to everybody who chipped in and helped us get this car through this rough time. This has been a really rough month on a wide variety of different issues, and the car did not help either. Neither did OFAC. So, story coming out of DC Whispers. Apparently, the rumor is circulating around. Apparently, they got this actually from a congressional staffer, saying that after Donald Trump announced the tariff on steel and aluminum, Mueller was ordered by whoever it is he really answers to escalate the Trump investigation. Just get him any way that you can. And not surprisingly, we're seeing another story over on Fox News, no less, that the Mueller team is now looking into possible United Arab Emirates money flowing into the Trump campaign. Now, Mueller is on a fishing expedition. This isn't an investigation. It's a fishing expedition. And nobody's talking, of course, about Israel's tampering with our internal politics. And, of course, this week is the AIPAC convention. We'll be talking about that a little bit further in the show. They're just desperate to find something they can try and turn into an issue against Trump. And meanwhile, of course, all these liberal Democrat crimes are being ignored. Sessions is refusing to appoint a special counsel to look into the handling of the email server investigation by the FBI. Nobody dares go near whatever's left of the Clinton Foundation. It's obviously very biased against Donald Trump. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, GOP Representative Lee Zeldin has sent a letter to Jeff Sessions urging him again to appoint a special counsel to investigate the abuse of the FISA court and how and why Hillary Clinton's email probe ended, and just how it is that Trump's Russia probe began. Zeldin is basically saying that Trump and his family are being put through the dark regions for the crime of defeating Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. And it does seem like that. He upset their plans. They were going to build the liberal utopia in our midst. And boy, take a look at what a mess they've made just with what they've done so far. Look at the worst cities in America in terms of crime, immigration, all of it. They're all under Democratic control. Apparently, they see that as the utopian ideal. Now, Chris Christie is out there saying that there are people in the White House who are out to get Kellyanne Conway. They want her gone. They're trying to find ways to hurt her, not directly, but her credibility. It must be terrible to work in the White House in that kind of an environment. Everybody, talk about faction fighting here. Now, as you know, Mueller came out with indictments against 13 Russians that he accuses of being behind the hack of the DNC email server, which we all know never actually happened. The forensics on the files themselves revealed they had to be copied to a flash drive. But Mueller's out there trying to score points. He's trying to keep the Russia bashing narrative going. He's trying to justify all the money and time and resources he spent on this fishing expedition. And as I said when he first made the announcement, I said Mueller's being very cagey. They can go to the corporate media with these 13 Russian indictments knowing they'll never actually come to this country to stand trial, and Mueller doesn't have to deal with the risk of being embarrassed in a court of law. And yes, Vladimir Putin has said that no, none of these Russians are going to be extradited to the United States of America. It'd be a kangaroo court anyway. Now, as I said, AIPAC is having their meeting this week. Netanyahu is at the White House right now. In fact, they were just talking about him on Fox News a little bit. And apparently a major feature of this year's AIPAC is the push for the United States to pass a ban on the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. They're really pushing for that one, despite the fact it is unconstitutional. But Israel hates our Bill of Rights. They want it to go away. They want the ability to just silence people like crazy. So over at, let's see, secureeveryaction.com, and I have this link to the front page so you can find it at whatreallyhappened.com. Tell Congress AIPAC doesn't represent you. It's basically an exhortation. Call the United States Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 and ask the operator to connect you to your members of Congress. Now, that means that you're going to have to call 3 times. Once for your representative and 2 more times for your senators. And basically, just tell them, no, this is This is completely ridiculous. Apparently, these bills are already in Congress. Senate 720 in the Senate, House Resolution 1697 in the House. It's the Israel Anti-Boycott Act. These are clearly unconstitutional. And boycotts are an internationally recognized form of peaceful protest. It's protected by free speech. And we have our Congress getting ready to simply ignore the First Amendment to the Constitution to please Almighty Israel. Talk about being traitors to what this nation is supposed to be. Now, Netanyahu has got lots to worry about while he's here in the United States. Apparently, Nur Hefetz, his former advisor, is now in talks to turn state's witness. And apparently his former media advisor is also going to turn state's witness. So his whole cabinet's starting to turn against him. Excuse me. Now, Maxine Waters is out there making the rounds. She's already campaigning for the November elections and ultimately for 2020. And here's where it's getting dangerous. Maxine Waters is promising that if the Democrats win back the House in 2018, Waters is promising financial reparations for black Americans. They're playing that victim/slavery card again. Now, if there are any black people out there who can document that they themselves personally have been a slave, I might be open to the idea. But the fact is, slavery ended a long time ago outside of the 1044, and we're all slaves to that one. But they're just trying to fan up this idea of reparations. Where does Maxine think she's going to get the money? She's not going to dip into her own pocket. And this country's already broken in debt. And the American people have run out of money. This is another campaign promise that's never going to happen, but she's going to be campaigning on this to lock in the black vote. Now, there's a video that has surfaced regarding David Hogue, who's the star of the gun grabbers. He's out there being presented as an ordinary kid, ordinary high schooler, even though he graduated Redondo Union High School a couple of years ago. And somebody actually found the tape that was made during his audition. And it's been put up on the social media, of course, immediately taken down. So now it's starting to appear on the new up-and-coming video streaming sites. As well as people just, webmasters can just put it on their own server. This is not going away. Now, Google is banning the Parkland shooting video. They're just shutting it down. They're not even concerned about the fact we, the American people, are seeing them cover it up. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call from James in Charlotte, North Carolina. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Boston.
Hello, James. I'm not hearing James in Charlotte. Oh, we lost him. Okay. Well, he was there just a minute ago. So people are still looking at Parkland, and they're seeing all these red flags about what went on. The 4 deputy sheriffs just staying outside and letting the shooting happen. The fact that none of them were wearing their body cams. There are reasons to conclude this was a staged event to push the gun grabber agenda. All right, James in Charlotte is back. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hello, Mike. I just wanted to maybe talk a little bit about this, what has got to be an epic example of mission creep by Robert Mueller. Now, is he reporting directly on a daily basis to Rod Rosenstein, or what level of control does Rosenstein have over him? Is he just giving him carte blanche?
Well, Rosenstein apparently is running the show, and even over and above Jeff Sessions himself. The word that we get is that in all the meetings, Sessions just kicks back and lets Rosenstein do all the talking. So yes, I would assume that Rod Rosenstein is basically in constant communication with Mueller, and may have been the one that issued the order to Mueller to just accelerate the campaign against Trump following the tariff announcement.
I wasn't aware that Sessions was even allowed in on meetings. I mean, I don't. Maybe he is. I'm not sure.
Well, there are meetings at the Department of Justice that involve Sessions. Whatever meetings are happening between Rosenstein and Mueller, you're probably correct. Sessions wouldn't be in on those.
Yeah, but obviously he's just going to keep letting him go if he has to go back to Trump's childhood or however far he's got to go.
They're going to be investigating Trump's dog at the way they're going right now. You know, is the dog a Russian agent?
Found out that he cut Sunday school or something.
No, they're going to accuse the Trump kids of being Russian agents.
Yeah. Well, it's bizarre, and it's truly just an incredible example of usurpation of legalities, and you know, he really, they never even had a genuine reason for having a special counsel that I can tell.
No, they
didn't go about it properly.
They didn't, and it wasn't even properly created, because the way a special counsel is supposed to work, under the statute that allows for a special counsel, the Department of Justice has to conduct a regular investigation, and if and only when they find actual evidence of wrongdoing, then a special counsel is appointed. That's not how it worked this time. Rosenstein went to Mueller and said, "You're the special counsel, sick him."
Yeah. Well, that's that's what I wanted to just talk about, and it's really a terrible flaunting of the law.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. But then that's what the deep state is all about. The Clintons have been flaunting all the laws going all the way back to 1980s Arkansas and that CIA gun and drug running operation.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks a lot for chatting with me.
All right, thanks a lot for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Kathleen in Paris. Kathleen, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Yes, going back to the Parkland shooting, and I listened to Wolfgang Halbig speak about this.
Yes.
And, he's quite the authority. Not only is this his profession to investigate shootings and to keep school safety, that's his career.
Yes.
And he even designed the system for this school, this very school.
Yes.
So he knows it. He knows everything about it. And he talked about a couple of things interesting. The fire alarm. He said that they should never evacuate the school for a fire alarm until a fire is really verified, because historically they have a school where the shooters did the same thing. They triggered the fire alarm,
yep,
went up on a hill and waited for the kids. I forget which school it was, but that's part of the protocol, the safety security system for all schools. Do not evacuate until you verify there's a fire. And they did that. So the administration did that, and that's wrong, and nobody's asking why. Why did you do that against your own protocol?
Well, see, in this case, it was a fire evacuation drill, and obviously, if you're going to drill for the safe, efficient evacuation of the school, you actually go through it. There really wasn't a fire. It was a fire drill.
Can you hold me over?
Yes, I will. Stay on the line. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're still talking with Kathleen in Paris, and Kathleen, you had one more thing you wanted to share with us.
The real fire drill was at 10 o'clock in the morning. So
yes,
that was finished. at 20 minutes before the school was to be let out for the day, they had another fire drill. And that's when the kids started evacuating. And the administration came on the intercom and said, evacuate.
You are correct. You're correct. And, of course, the alleged shooter, Nicholas Cruz, simply walked away with the other students.
That's what they're saying, yeah.
Yeah,
and
okay.
So
I stand corrected on that. It sounds to me like they pulled that second alarm to basically give Nicholas cover to get the heck out of there.
Yeah. That sounds very plausible. But then, 3 minutes after the fire drill alarm, which was 20 minutes before they were supposed to get out, 3 minutes after that, and so the kids are filing out, they did a code red. And a code red is the alarm for active shooter.
Yes.
And the protocol for that is for the teacher to go immediately lock the door and turn out the light and put the kids in the corners of the room so that if anybody looks in the window, they see darkness.
Yes.
And so that's why some kids were trapped out in the hallway with no place to go because the teachers had locked the doors.
Very interesting. Very interesting timeline.
And,
yeah.
Yeah. And, this is, coming from Wolfgang, so I trust it.
Yeah, I do too. I've had him on the show. He's definitely an expert. Anything else, Kathleen?
Yes, he said one more thing that was very, very interesting. He said that, how parents make a lawsuit even if the kid stumbles on his shoestrings and falls down the stairs or something?
Yes.
Some parent is going to make a lawsuit. He said that of all these deaths, no lawsuits have been filed.
That is interesting.
So we have to ask ourselves why. And sadly, the person who was interviewing him did not ask him what he thought about why. But I have an idea, and I'm thinking that if people have filed lawsuits, there's going to be a trial. There's going to be investigation. There's going to be discovery. So I don't know if these people all had their house mortgages paid off and whatever they would have sued for was doubled, and so, but there's no lawsuits, and that's very curious.
I mean, that was the case in Sandy Hook. The parents of the supposedly killed children all had the mortgages paid off. It was amazing. I'm going to try and get Wolfgang back on my show. I imagine he's very busy right now, but we're really going to try and get that going. Kathleen, thank you.
That would be really, really great, because the interview that I saw him do was like on the first day, so he knows more now.
All right, I'll try and get him on the show and
great.
Get onto this thing here again. Kathleen, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. We're going to switch over to Steve Elkins, who's been waiting very, very patiently. Steve, thank you. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, that's one smart cookie, that last caller there.
Yes.
About those little important things there to talk about. Yeah. Hey, when you talk about we're talking about mainstream media backing off on this officer, Scott Peterson. I don't know if you've noticed that, but they really backed off this guy. Trump called him a coward, and the mainstream media pretty much portrayed him as a coward. And I noticed that this war on him has completely stopped. And I can only assume that's because we found out, 3 to 4 police officers also were told to stand down. So I figured if 3 or 4 were told to stand down, he probably was also told to stand down. But they need one villain, one person to place blame on for all this stuff. And I noticed that they've just backed off on this guy completely, Scott Peterson.
Well, the reason,
did you notice that?
Yeah, the reason is it has to do with the timing. Scott Peterson was originally thought to be, he was the deputy assigned to the school, and that was his job to go on in and deal with it. But then when it came on out, there were 3 other deputy sheriffs there who also refused to go into the school. Then it became rather inappropriate to focus just on Scott.
Well, I noticed he's hired an attorney. I think he's going to sue for defamation of character. I mean, I surely would. I believe he was told to stand down, and of course they wanted to asked the evil, cast the evil shadow on this guy here, and he was their scapegoat of why this all happened, and it's not going to pan out. Hey, the last thing I want to mention is about this reparations thing you talked about. I think this reparations to blacks over slavery, this is like a third-time attempt at this one. And I think, which I haven't heard them use any kind of anything to really back up their case other than we were taken away from our homeland and brought here against our will, but I expect them, some cunning lawyer, to pull this little, you give reparations to Native Americans after you stole their land, therefore you should give reparations to the blacks that you enslaved and took to America. I wouldn't be surprised if
Steve, I got to put you on hold. Steve, I'm sorry, got to put you on hold. Don't hang up. We got to do some commercials, and we'll come right back to you. Stay tuned. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. We're still talking with Steve Elkins. We're talking about the Parkland shooting, and yes, I have just sent an email to Wolfgang Halbig about getting him onto the show, so we'll see what happens there. Steve, would you kind of pick up where you left off?
No, I was talking about this third attempt at reparations for slavery to the blacks, and I think you're going to see this time around a cunning lawyer probably pull statement saying that the United States government has been giving reparations to Native Americans for a long, long time for taking the land away from them and kicking them off land and the atrocities that the United States government did towards the Native American Indians. I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing this talk. And like I said, this is a third time. This is their third attempt at this reparations thing. I don't know. Third time's charm. Will they cave in? But if they cave in on this, you can pretty much say everybody's got a story of being oppressed and abused and then put their hand out. So you may be just opening a door of, just making payouts to everybody, and I can't see that happening. But wouldn't be surprised if some cunning lawyer tries that whole thing with Native Americans. You've paid them reparations for stealing their land. You should also pay the black Americans here for reparations for taking them away from Africa. I wouldn't be surprised.
There is an important difference there. And that is that the Native Americans have still not been allowed back to the stolen lands. But the black people are not slaves anymore. That's what we were told the Civil War was all about. So there's a difference there. The Native Americans are still on those reservations. The black people are full-fledged citizens and they can go wherever they want. And let's be brutally honest about it. Okay, today's people who are descended from the slaves live much better lives and a much better condition than the descendants of the people who remained in Africa. And that is something that you have to factor on in there, that today's lives are improved because of what happened in the past. But you're absolutely right. If anybody looks back in their family history long enough, you're going to find an atrocity committed against you. My family was victimized by the Inquisition. And forced to convert from Judaism to Catholicism. So if it wasn't for the Inquisition, I would have been a rich Hollywood Jew for my career. Do I sue the Vatican over that?
Got it. I got it. No, I agree. I totally agree. No, I'm just thinking that that's probably where they're going to move in that direction. It's you need to do this, the right thing, and you gave reparations to them. You should do also. But let's hope we don't go down that pathway because, like you said, everybody's got a story, and everybody could put their hand out and say at some point in time, I deserve to be paid also. And let's not go there.
No, we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there because, again, let me put it in another context, and I've mentioned this before. Nobody alive today is either a slave or a slave owner. They're all dead and gone. And this idea that you are owed money for something that happened before you were born, it is ridiculous. I refuse to accept responsibility for things that happen outside my control, and certainly things that happened before I was born are outside my control. I refuse to be told I'm responsible somehow. It's just not going to work. Now, a little bit of family history. My ancestors, the New Hampshire side of the family, ran a station on the Underground Railroad that was helping to smuggle escaped slaves to Canada. Now, if I were to go up into Canada today and knock on the doors of the descendants of those escaped slaves and demand reparations, what do you think would happen? They would laugh me off the porch, and they would be right to do so. Had I been alive back then, yes, I would have helped run that station on the Underground Railroad, but I wasn't, and I can't take credit for it. I'm certainly proud that my family did that, but I had nothing to do with it. And the people who are descended from those that the Underground Railroad benefited, they have no obligation to me whatsoever.
Last question for you. You know, since Israel's run out of people to prosecute for war crimes of this Holocaust, and now they're going after Poland, trying to get reparations from them and make them guilty, play the guilt card to get reparations from them. After Poland, who else can they point a finger at? They're going to try to find somebody. They always have to find somebody to make them pay and put the guilt on you.
Again, World War II happened before we were all alive. Nobody listening to this broadcast was ever a Nazi. And this idea of a collective guilt and retroactive guilt, it is a scam. It is a scam to extort money from people for crimes that they did not commit against victims who are no longer with us.
I agree. Hey, thanks again, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. Now, somebody wrote in to remind me that apparently the order to stand down came from Captain Jan Jordan, the commander of the Broward Sheriff's Office, Parkland District. The log shows that he ordered his cops merely to set up a perimeter. Now, that's not the training in these cases. Everybody was breaking the rules and going against protocol, and that's another red warning flag. This was theater, crisis actors and all. Now, over at Breitbart, they're reporting on the big push for gun confiscation, and apparently anti-gun interest groups are using Parkland again. Oh, we've got to, take away all the guns here. And apparently a raft of nearly identical gun confiscation bills have been filed by liberal politicians in states all across the country. Isn't it amazing? They were all ready to go. As soon as Parkland happened, ooh, here, I've got an anti-gun bill. It's like when 9/11 happened and the plan to invade Afghanistan was already on Bush's desk. Now, here's an interesting story. See, right now, the gun grabbers have a bit of a problem because a lot of people are saying you're never going to get all the guns. People can 3D print guns, and if you're in a gun-free zone, even a plastic gun gives you the ability to cause some mayhem. The only way that you're going to stop a bad guy with a gun is to have a good guy with a gun. But yet this high school teacher has been suspended for saying he supports teachers being armed. Now, down in Florida, little bit of a circus. The Florida Senate approved a ban on the AR-15 for a grand total of 15 minutes. And they went back for a second consideration, and it was voted down. And instead, they voted to arm teachers in Florida. They want those AR-15s. They're afraid the American people, if they have that kind of semi-automatic firepower, we're not going to do what the government tells us to do anymore. And we're heading into a world war where the government needs you to just do as you're told. Salute the flag. Give us your money and your children. Here's a reality. More kids are dying every year from texting while driving than from AR-15s. Let's ban cell phones, at least for kids under 21 years old. Does that sound like a workable solution? Or just ban the cars? It isn't the cars, it isn't the guns. It's the behavior of the people controlling them. And we got to stop drugging them out of their minds. And our schools need to stop indoctrination about human-caused global warming and teach some common sense behaviors about how to drive safely, don't text, how to handle guns safely. When I was a kid, gun safety was taught in the schools. And we never had a problem with mass shootings of any kind. Now, there's an interesting little article, actually it's a Twitter tweet, that is worth repeating. If the left is willing to lie, cheat, and steal from us while we are armed to the teeth, can you imagine what they would do if we let them take our guns away? And that really is the issue. The Second Amendment exists so that we, the people, may be armed to hold abusive government in check. And this government has become very, very abusive of we, the people. And if they get the guns, it will get worse. There is no question. Let's take a phone call. Nathan in Northern California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Michael. Thank you for taking my call. I'll try to make it real quick. I had one kind of big question for you, but I've lost two YouTube channels, one around the time of the Vegas shooting and one here in Parkland, Florida. So I'll try to be careful about what I'm saying. But my real question to you is, do you think that Donald Trump will ever try to make an effort to reinstate the Smith-Mundt Act? I don't think it's fair that Americans have to be putting up with being psyoped and propagandized to death about events, as far as I'm concerned, just didn't happen. You think there's any chance of that? Because if he doesn't do that, I'm not voting for him in 2020. I'm just going to stay home. I've looked at some videos where people have been producing these things outside of YouTube, and believe me, there are some very, very, very angry people. They're sick of this stuff.
Yes. I mean, amazingly enough, even the people I was talking with at this used car lot, they were going on and on about all this stuff. I mean, everybody I've talked to,
people are
these
mad.
are people. Yeah, they're angry, and these are people you wouldn't think are spending a lot of time being clued in on what's going on, but they are.
Yeah.
They are, and they are very angry. It's almost frightening.
Well, all I wanted to say, if Donald Trump doesn't, get off his can and do something about reinstating the Smith-Mundt Act and putting a stop to these stupid psyops, which in my personal opinion, these things are not only stupid, they're stupid above and beyond stupid. And I've heard enough of people complaining and screaming and yelling about how sick of it they are. And if he doesn't get in touch with America and find out that we're really, really tired of this, hello, I'm staying home in 2020. I don't care how well he's done as president. I'm not going to get off my couch and go vote for him. I will not do it.
Well, that's okay. I'm sure
opinion.
some Democrat will do your voting for you if you have a valid
I'm
voter
sure.
registration and don't show up. Somebody will fill it in for you.
Yeah, I'm out here in California, so I'm sure they'll figure out a way to make me vote Democratic, whether I do it or not. One last thing, and I'll get off.
Well, before we get to that, I want to go on back. Even if Trump reinstates the Smith-Mundt Act, and that actually would be the purview of Congress, not the president. The president can't simply declare it by imperial edict. It's not going to stop the stage shootings, and it's not going to stop the propaganda, because that kind of stuff was going on even while the Smith-Mundt Act was enforced. In fact, I think the only reason for passing that bill, it was itself a piece of propaganda. Hey, we're not lying to you. But we know these kinds of hoaxes, USS Maine, Gulf of Tonkin, so forth and so on. They've been doing it all along.
Yeah.
These people do not believe,
sad.
they don't follow the law. They're not in compliance with law. They think it's their right to lie to us to get what they want.
Right. And what is so mind-boggling to me personally is that there has been hundreds of people out there that have provided all kinds of information that Sandy Hook was a hoax. It just didn't happen. And 535 members of Congress, and it's like it goes in one ear and out the other. They don't even understand that there are so many people that know that Sandy Hook didn't happen. And they're just deaf and dumb. I don't get it.
Well, they're probably concerned about it, and that's why they want to go after the guns. And they're kind of in a position of realizing that their survival as a government now hinges on disarming the American people. And they could trigger a civil war going this way. I was talking to somebody the other day who's a responsible shooter, fully in compliance with all the laws. And he was saying the same thing. It's reached the point where gun owners are just going to say, no more. I stand on my Second Amendment rights. And the Supreme Court ruled in United States versus Miller that the Second Amendment does reserve to the people the same weaponry being carried by the uniformed services, because the goal of the Second Amendment was for the American people to be able to match the government in firepower, again, to deter abusive government. And that's why the government is obsessing about the AR-15 and these other sporting rifles here. Even though people don't use those to commit crimes, they use Saturday night specials and throwaways. The only place these AR-15s are being used are in these staged mass shootings.
Right. Well, the whole thing is just very, very sad. And the last thing for me to say, all it took for me to find out that this thing was 99% chance not real was something I mentioned about a week and a half ago. I actually called Walmart. The gal at Walmart told me they went on lockdown. No students could get in. She said a little less than 100 had to stand outside Walmart to call their parents. I asked her, did she see any medevac helicopters? She said, I saw 2. And my guess is it was maybe a sheriff's helicopter and a news helicopter. No medevac helicopters came there to rescue anybody. And if you look on the map, you can see this big track where 3 or 4 of them can easily land, and they can put police cars in front of them. And if that kid was still active and he tried to shoot at a medevac helicopter, they'll turn him into applesauce. You know, it's crazy.
Well,
So
it is crazy. Frankly, if I were the parents of those kids who were locked out of the Walmart, I would be suing. And I'm rather shocked and ashamed that the manager of that store didn't have the common sense to just unlock the door and say, kids, get in here, and then close and relock it.
Yeah, it was on. Well, they went on immediate lockdown, and like I said last time, he couldn't get in. Cruz could not get in to go buy a drink at Subway because they were on lockdown. If he was in the store, by some miracle, he couldn't get out to go walk down to McDonald's. So the whole story is just, a big lie. Oh, yes, he walked down to McDonald's. I couldn't get an answer out of anybody at McDonald's as to what went on. Starbucks next door, they have been told by the manager not to say anything. And Joe DiMaggio Hospital, they can't say yes or no whether they admitted anybody from the school. They can't divulge anything. They can't even give you a yes or a no.
Boy, that's a giveaway.
She said, I can't give you any information about our patients. And I kind of told the lady, I don't want any information about the patients. I just want to know, did you admit anybody from the school? Yes or no? And this is the closest hospital to that school, and the lady won't tell me. So anyway, there you go, Michael. Have a great show.
All right, thanks an awful lot, Nathan. We're going to let you go. We're going to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And let's get back on up to the top of the news. Now, as it's been the pattern with all of these staged mass shootings, as soon as the gun grabbers start flapping their gums about taking away the guns, gun sales soar. This could actually save Remington. And despite having relations with various corporations slashed under pressure from the liberals, the NRA and various gun groups are seeing their membership soar. Google searches for NRA membership are up 49 times. So these pro-Second Amendment organizations, they're all getting new members. They're all got new money coming on in. Americans understand what's going on. This has nothing to do with school safety. And the tragedy of it is the gun grabbers are going to go on shooting up theaters and shopping malls and schools until they get what they want or until they trigger a civil war. That's the real tragedy of it all. All right, let's take a phone call here. Milton in Pennsylvania. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. I was wondering if you could tell me where I can buy an assault hammer. That term is being used.
I think it's called a nail gun. It's a nail gun. Yeah, they fire rapidly, too. And you can kill people with the nail gun.
I'm only a year into purchasing firearms, and I bought a Delton AR-15, and nowhere did it say when I was buying it, it said assault rifle on it. I can't find it.
Yeah, well, the term assault rifle is something the gun grabbers came up with. I mean, most of the people who make those modular weapons, they call them sporting rifles. And they're popular not because they look mean, but because you can modify them. You can take parts off, put parts on. You can even change the caliber that the gun is firing with just the barrel wrench and a few other small parts. And so, you know, I've had a chance to fire them, and they're a lot of fun. It's not high on my list of things to have right now, but you know, I've reached the age where, you know, my idea of an exciting time is going down the beach with a metal detector.
I used to do that.
Yes.
I found a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I did too. I actually built my first metal detector when I was in high school, and I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I had a junky little, remember when Radio Shack was selling that, like $79 or something?
Yeah.
I found enough stuff that I went and I bought a whites detector, some like $500, and it was all for money that I found.
Yeah, those whites are very, very good machines, and I miss the Radio Shack that I knew as a kid, because it really was a place that catered to electronic hobbyists. You could buy, you know, parts to make things, and that's something America has largely forgotten how to do, is actually make stuff, and it's one of the reasons why other countries like China are just whipping our rear ends over manufacturing, because their kids are growing up knowing how to make things. Okay?
Yeah. Okay, we won't tie up no more. I just wanted people know how to use that terminology. Assault that makes it worse than anything else, you know.
Well, any weapon is an assault weapon, even a samurai sword, if you think about it. Milton, got to let you go. Got to do station identification, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And Fox News is now reporting that when Donald Trump met with Benjamin Netanyahu, the number one topic of discussion was Iran. How do we get the war in Iran going? Iran hasn't actually done anything other than refuse to do as they're told, which I guess is a crime, seen from the point of view of the United States and Israeli governments here. Now, over in Syria, Tiger forces have liberated a large area from militants in East Ghouta. And apparently the militants in Ghouta are not doing very well. As we reported last week, the Russians arranged for a humanitarian pause where everybody is supposed to stop shooting, and they set up a corridor to allow the civilians to leave the area to safety. But the militants, the terrorists, were basically sniping, using snipers against the civilians to keep them in their homes, because they want more civilian casualties so that they can demonize Russia and Syria. But things may be changing, because the East Ghouta terrorists are now offering a bargain. They're willing to release the civilians from the area in exchange for food and water and medical supplies. They're not asking for weapons. They already have plenty of those. But apparently they're running out of basic life support, and they're willing to let the civilians go. Now, over in eastern Damascus, apparently the terrorists are on the retreat, and the Syrian army is rapidly advancing. It does seem to drag out and drag out and drag out. We've been in Syria, for 8 years now? But it does look like Syria is taking back significant parts of their country. They're taking back the important parts. They're taking the hubs, the centers, the cities. And obviously the United States is not willing to let go. And that is a real problem. They still want Assad out. They want an obedient U.S. puppet ruling Syria so that they can move on to Iran. Article out of the Real News. Is the U.S. ramping up its military presence in Syria and planning to attack Iran for Israel? This is coming from Colonel Larry Wilkerson speaking at the National Press Club on the day before the official AIPAC conference. And this alternative conference was titled U.S.-Israel Relations and Middle East Policy. And yes, again, according to Fox News, that's what Netanyahu and Trump are talking about, how to get into Iran. And maybe it's time to sort of look on back at all of these wars, going all the way back to 2001, and ask yourself a question. How many of these countries attacked and destroyed by the United States initiated the conflict? Who fired first? In every single one of them, the U.S. committed the aggression, usually on the basis of absolute fairy tales, Saddam's nuclear weapons. Article coming out, well, actually, this is another tweet. Apparently, in the fighting for the liberation of Eastern Ghouta, the government forces continue to capture American weapons that were being used by the terrorists. So the U.S. is still covertly supplying these terrorists. They're spending your tax dollars to buy weapons for terrorists, along with drug gangs. Remember Fast and Furious? The U.S. government loves to give guns away to criminals, to drug lords, to terrorists, but you law-abiding American citizens, you can't be trusted with those. Now, Israel is apparently planning a new war in Syria. This is according to the original antiwar.com, but not for the reasons it claims. Basically, it wants to chop off that southern part of Syria and keep it for itself, the Golan Heights, which is still technically part of Syria, but it's been occupied by Israel, and Israel's already selling the oil and gas from underneath it. That's not their property. They're selling stolen goods, but they want to basically fix that by stealing the Golan Heights and annexing it to Israel. That's what's really going on. Now, you remember last week when the news was showing these overhead satellite photos. In fact, it was on Friday we were talking about it with Claire. And it was your typical overhead, black and white, slightly blurry photo of an area near Damascus with these very obvious buildings on it. We were being told it's an Iranian missile base. And even, it was very obvious, no, that's not what it is. It wasn't laid out like a missile base, and there were no launching facilities. Well, the Syrian government has basically clarified the issue. The site in question belongs to the Syrian military, and it's a vehicle storage yard. Basically, those long white buildings are garages for holding multiple vehicles. That's it. Now, as you know, we're going to start seeing a lot of ramping up of anti-Iran propaganda. And there's a very interesting little bit of history over at Global Research, and it talks about the CIA's Operation Merlin. Now, a whistleblower put this out in the media, which got him into a lot of trouble. But basically, Operation Merlin was the CIA's effort to alter and change the U.S. intelligence on Iran in order to make it look like it was a threat. So here we have the CIA isn't gathering intelligence, it was manufacturing it. It was creating intelligence in order to justify operations. Remember that laptop of death? Ooh, it's horrible. It's a stolen Iranian nuclear scientist's laptop, and it's full of all kinds of plans for a nuclear weapon. And it turned out it was basically an Israeli hoax. It was laundered through a third-party group, the MEK, and then the media went to town with it. But real nuclear weapons experts looked at what was being let out about it, charts and graphs and blueprints, and said, this is all nonsense. This is stuff somebody copied off the internet, and they made a few changes and put some Iranian labels on it, and none of it is any good. None of it would work. The U.S. government and the corporate media still persist in their belief that the American people are stupid, uneducated rubes who won't know any better when they're being lied to. How wrong they were on that one. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining the network. Now, down in Yemen, and I think it's become the perfect example of what follows a U.S. intervention. And yes, the U.S. is using the Saudis as a proxy because they know how war-weary the American people have become. The United Nations is trying to come up with a humanitarian response plan, and they're just looking at the damage down there to basic infrastructure, water, sewage, power. The UN is saying only 50% of Yemen's health facilities remain functional, and they're all running at limited capacity. Over 3 million people have been forced to leave their homes since this conflict began. Now remember, this all began because some years back there was a successful U.S. intervention in Yemen. They kicked out the legitimate government, they put in a U.S. puppet ruler, but it turned out the people of Yemen didn't like being ruled by a foreign puppet, and they kicked the puppet out. And so this whole exercise of using Saudi Arabia to go back into Yemen is to basically slap down the Yemeni people and say, you will love your U.S. puppet ruler, or bad things will happen to you. And I have to say, as sorry as I feel for the people of Yemen over how much they've suffered, they got a lot of guts. They're not backing down. Story out of Sputnik News. There's a Swiss newspaper, Le Temps, has basically blown the lid off the fact that NATO already has a base in Ukraine. And it's basically a training base, 26 kilometers, actually 16 miles long and 11 to 8 miles wide. And it's a firing range. And apparently NATO soldiers are going there to train the Ukrainian forces to be better killers. Ahead of a confrontation with those pesky breakaway eastern Ukrainian republics. And I'm going to predict right now, when that gets going, they will attempt to grab Crimea back. And that gets us to the question of just how far is Putin willing to go before he decides it's time to just get this war going. I know he's dealing with pressure from his own hardliners. There are a lot of people who are running around right now saying this new world war is now inevitable. We might as well start it right now. Now, if you remember, last week we were talking about Vladimir Putin's State of the Union speech, and he unveiled a series of 6 new weapon systems Russia has been developing and is now starting to put into active service. Some of them sound pretty amazing. And the U.S. initial reaction was, he's bluffing. You don't have to worry about anything. Yeah, we got lots to worry about, even without these 6 new systems. Russia has almost as many nuclear warheads ready to launch as the United States, and theirs tend to be bigger. So there's something to worry about. But as it turns on out, the nation's intelligence agencies apparently had actually gotten wind of these new systems being developed. I mean, remember, I'd gotten wind about the maneuverable reentry vehicles a couple of years ago and reported it here. But the intelligence agencies, they couldn't get inside. They couldn't find out what was really going on, what was really being built. And so basically, U.S. intelligence missed the boat on this one. I mean, the CIA missed the Soviet Union going into Afghanistan. They even missed the collapse of the Soviet Union. They're too busy going through our emails and personal pictures, I guess. Now, not too long ago, there was an attempt by the media, and this came from Britain's Defense Secretary Gavin Williamson. And he just unleashed this scare story about Russian spies getting ready to launch attacks on Britain's power infrastructure, warning that Moscow was planning ways to murder thousands and thousands and thousands of the British people. And it's, boy, the warning was there. Do you know what that evil, malevolent Russia has done? They've sent a tanker of liquefied natural gas because Britain is running out in this harsh winter. Oh, those evil Russians, how could they do that? How could they send that gas to those British people to keep them warm? The U.S. media is still out there trying to push this story that North Korea is providing material support for Syria's chemical weapons. Nobody can, of course, find any Syrian chemical weapons. The terrorists have plenty of them. Some of them manufactured right here in the United States of America. But they're still pushing that story. And supposedly this is all drawn from newspapers who were allowed to review a 200-page report prepared supposedly by United Nations experts. As it turns out, the UN is saying they're not going to officially release this document. It's going to remain hidden. Just take the corporate media's word about what it says. But going down the list of items they are saying that North Korea is sending to Syria, they all have benign purposes. They could be used for making candy or oil infrastructure. Remember when we were all being told that Iraq was importing aluminum tubes that just had to be for uranium centrifuges, and it turned out actually they were being used for missiles that Iraq was allowed to have by the United Nations. Truth is the first casualty of war. We're seeing it right now. We're being just lied to on an unprecedented scale at the same time that anybody who's questioning those lies is being silenced and shut down. Now, credit to Fox News on this one. Every once in a while, they continue to break ranks. So Fox News is out there saying an attack on North Korea could start a U.S.-China war, so don't do it. And right now, China tensions are on a knife edge over the Taiwan issue. Now, the South Korean delegation has gone to the North Korea for peace talks. The public story is they're trying to arrange talks between the U.S. and North Korea has to give up their nuclear weapons. I would almost be willing to bet a jar of kimchi that they're going to be talking about reunification. Because if these delegations came out and said, we are now a united Korea and the nuclear weapons belong to all of Korea, what's the U.S. going to do? Bomb Seoul? Now, getting on back to Taiwan, as you know, Congress has passed this bill to cozy up to Taiwan. China views that very unfavorably, and China's already a little bit raw from all these tensions in the South China Sea. So China is ratcheting up the threats, basically hinting that if this bill does go into law, it could actually trigger a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. And the Chinese government is saying they will never tolerate Taiwanese independence. So World War III could break out there. Now, apparently in Israel, 5 journalists were jailed during a demonstration in 2012. And one of the soldiers who arrested them admitted the reporters were just walking down the street and then said, we were ordered to. The battalion commander ordered them arrested. So basically, Israeli soldiers assault journalists to prevent media coverage. All right, let's take a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, don't forget, yellow cake from Niger. That was another lie. Remember, wound up being a pound cake from Entenmann's.
Well, the story was bogus from the beginning. They wanted to do it from Niger because they wanted to create paperwork saying that all this yellow cake uranium oxide was going from Niger to Iraq, and it didn't make sense. Iraq has plenty of natural uranium inside their own borders. They don't need to import it from anybody else. The U.S. imports uranium. Between what the Russians now control and what the EPA locked away, so the Russians got a sweeter deal, the U.S. has to actually import uranium from other countries, despite having a huge supply here. It's just, that's how screwed up the politics have become.
But it's all lies. Remember when they said Saddam had these remote control, these drones, they can fly and spray chemical weapons? They wound up being like little itty-bitty models in a hangar. They're like as big as your wrist,
Yeah, they were hobby drones. They were hobby drones, and maybe they were carrying a camera, but they certainly didn't have the range, to reach into another country, and they didn't have the payload capacity. Remember when they tried to convince us that these hydrogen weather balloon inflators were mobile biological weapons laboratories?
I remember that also. Yeah, see how the government, with the CIA and with the media, they can say anything they want, and hopefully most Americans won't believe it now. How can you believe it now after all these lies? It's amazing, Mike. My head spins. I can't believe how there's still a percentage of people that buy this crap.
Yeah, but it's rapidly shrinking. It's rapidly shrinking. I mean, I think a lot of people have been paying attention but don't say anything out of a misguided sense of patriotism and politeness, but that's gone. Traveling around this island, like I said, the guys at the car dealership, people I'm talking to, they're all angry, and they're all saying exactly the same thing. We're sick of being lied to. We're sick of the war economy. We're sick of Israel, and they're getting very, very angry right now.
Mike, and on that Putin's State of the Union speech, with most of it was about the economy and corruption. I watched the whole thing, and toward the end was about military to protect their country and their interests. But two of the weapon systems that he was talking about are already in service.
Yes,
because since 2004, when we pulled out of the treaty. That's when they said, hey, with the missile defense, all this, we got to start coming up with deterrence, and that's where it's at. Hypersonic missiles is the deterrent.
Yes.
Mach 20 is like, what's the speed of that?
It's almost orbital
insane.
speed. It's almost orbital speed, again, they fly right at the top edge of the atmosphere where there's very little resistance, and we know that Russia has them. We know that China has them. Because there was actually a YouTube video showing the test of one. Anyway, listen, we got to take a break for commercials. Don't hang up, Dustin. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And once again, if you want to help Republic Broadcasting Network stay on the air, and we really need it, we need your help. All that you can do. You can see what's going on around you right now. Corporate media is trying to censor the independent media. And the commercial, our advertisers are being attacked. They're being scared away from us. Look what they're doing to Alex Jones right now. It's just insane out there. So, if you can help, please do. And the postal address to send a check or money order is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. If you want to call on in and become a recurring subscriber, that number is 800-724-2719, extension 03. And it has never been more important than right now that you continue to support RBN and all of their hosts. All right, we're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. And, it's kind of interesting. One of the weapon systems that Putin described, the hypersonic craft, is supposedly powered by nuclear energy. They've apparently created this very tiny portable reactor that generates enough heat to generate thrust on what amounts to a ramjet. And if that's what they've done, it is a brilliant design because it gets around a lot of the other problems of trying to use a chemically fueled engine. Now, when aircraft first started going faster than the speed of sound, they discovered there was a problem. And the problem was shock waves forming inside the engines, leading to compressor stalls. And as they started developing engines that were intended to go faster than the speed of sound, they discovered they had to bring the air into the front. They had to slow it down in order to mix the fuel with it. Because if you've got a supersonic airflow going through the engine and your little injectors are throwing fuel into there, it just forms another shock wave. And the fuel and air can't mix. And obviously, if you have to slow the air to subsonic speed and then try and get enough energy out the back end, it's a self-limiting situation. But with a nuclear-powered ramjet, you don't have to worry about fuel mixing. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You've got the air flowing through, getting heated and blowing out the back. And at the same time, it's keeping the nuclear unit from melting down. If this is what they've built, it's an absolutely brilliant design.
And Mike, did you see the video of the MiG-31 dropping that? It's called Kinzel, which translates to dagger system. That's operational, most likely. Correct me if I'm wrong. MiG-31, isn't that the world's fastest plane? It was built just to shoot down the SR-71, I believe, right?
I think so. It's kind of obsolete. In fact, I remember seeing an ad for anybody who was actually going to visit Russia back before this new Cold War nonsense got started, somebody actually owned a MiG-31 two-seater, and for enough rubles, that would take you for a ride, which I think would be fun. I've been up in a military jet in the back seat one time, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, we're at a spot right now, Mike. Like, you got the trade wars heating up. You got all these wars in the Middle East, and like Putin's not. I mean, he sent us a message. You know,
That's
can you
exactly
hear us
right.
now? That's
That
you hear me now?
last part of
Yep.
the speech was aimed directly at the White House.
And I know we talked about this before, but I want people to remember this. They built the world's fastest torpedo, which has a small motor on the front of it that creates a bubble around it called supercavitation. That was built in the 70s.
Yes.
So, just because they don't have the budget we do, they have the ingenuity,
Yeah.
You don't need a lot of money to be smart.
Well, the Russian schools focus heavily on math and science and engineering, and that's why they've got the talent pool to do this kind of work and have it, not be a piece of junk. Our schools are trying to brainwash our kids about the Second Amendment and human-caused global warming, and we've got all these people coming out of school with college degrees that are pretty much worthless, art history major, liberal arts, and they don't really actually know how to do anything. And this gets back to what I was saying about Radio Shack. When I was young, Radio Shack catered to a population of young people that like to build things. And by building things, just learned how to make things, grew up with that attitude of we can build what we need. Young people today don't have that. They've been plugged into the consumer economy of just buy what you need, use it up. When it breaks down, throw it away and buy another one. And that's why our manufacturing has suffered. There have been some very, very poor decisions been made by this government going over the last 30 years, actually.
What's a capacitor again? I got a lot of capacitors from...
I used to love those big electrolytics from the computer power supplies because you could weld paper clips together with those.
All right, Mike, real quick on Trump's trade. People don't realize we only get 2% of steel coming in from China. A lot of it comes from South Korea, Turkey, Canada. I just want to let people know that.
Canada is really angry about this. Dustin, if you've got more, you need to stay on the line because we got to do another commercial break.
That's it, Mike. Have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We'll be back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go right back to the telephones. David in San Francisco. Aloha, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, aloha, Michael. Do you remember right after 9/11, Bush had a famous joke that he would give when he was giving speeches. It was called the trifecta joke.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the one during the campaign year, for the listeners who don't remember it, during the campaign year, Bush promised that he would never bust the budget unless there was a recession, there was a war, or there was some sort of national emergency.
Yes.
And so then, after 9/11 happened, he would open up speeches with a little joke called the trifecta joke, and he would say, I just won the trifecta. And you can look it up online, and it's called the trifecta joke. You can hear about 30 versions of it. And it's pretty amazing about how the budget can be busted in the name of a national emergency. Now, you look at Trump, and everything he does falls to crap. And he's ruining the economy. He's got inside traders. This steel tariffs business, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, even today, just an hour or so ago, said that Trump had no plan for how he was going to deal with this trade war. No plan. He went into it totally blind, but he's going to be the genius that's going to win this war, right? And so he has no plan, and so he's obviously going to have to bust the budget doing it. And in fact, there was a study just the other day. You remember how the average American, from the tax plan that got passed on January 1st, the average American is going to get $1.50 a week
yes.
In their paycheck. Well, it turns out that this steel and aluminum embargo is going to cost the average beer or soda drinker $6 a week. So so there goes their tax break.
Well, thank goodness I don't drink beer.
Yeah, no kidding. Aluminum cans, steel cans, whatever, either way, the tax break is going to be lost by fourfold.
Well,
And
it's worse than that for people who are buying a new car. The cost of new cars is going to go right through the roof. If they're made here in the United States, the steel frames are going to cost more. The aluminum body panels are going to cost more.
Well, where I was basically just going to lead it is that Trump is trying to bust the budget so he can raid Social Security again. And that was the biggest part of where you remember that Bush ran his war. It was, a $5 trillion war against weapons of mass destruction that he lost, basically, because we never found any weapons of mass destruction. And he basically stole from Social Security. And that was his trifecta joke, that he was going to have to raid Social Security in order to, balance the budget again. Well, it turns out, everybody's been raging against Obama for, raising the national debt. Well, what they don't say is that Obama took Trump's $5 trillion hidden spending, and he basically paid Social Security back, but he put that debt back onto the backs of the entire nation. And so Obama balanced the budget by taking it out, by removing the debt, the burden from Social Security. But here's Trump, who's going to ruin the economy again and raid Social Security. So that's what I smell, and that trifecta joke answers the big picture of what Trump's up to. He's organized crime. And you see in that Carl Icahn, the Wall Street wheeler dealer, who did his dump of steel stocks 3 days before Trump made his announcement.
Yeah, that's definitely insider trading. I remember another one of Bush's tacky jokes is he kept going around saying, this would be a lot easier if this were a dictatorship, as long as I'm the dictator. The problem with trading Social Security, there isn't that much there. Because most of it was actually plundered by the Clinton administration. That's where he got his magic budget surplus, is he was taking billions and billions of dollars out of the cash buildup that was put there for the baby boomer retirements. He was basically embezzling from the working people of America, and the government really can't put it all back. Obama may have tried to put some of it back, but it was a token effort at best. But as far as the economy, it's already in a ruin. It's a walking corpse looking for a place to fall down.
Well, there are various ways of looking at it. Living out here in San Francisco, where inflation is insane, the replacement, you remember .com was going strong in the end of the 90s, and that's part of Clinton's plan was to have that .com economy fill up Social Security again, and for the most part it did. But it was in a very short period of time. About 2.5 years was this massive flooding back into Social Security. But the the Bush looting of it again has, decimated the stability of it. But again, one of your earlier callers was talking about the creativity of people, whether it was the creativity of Russians for coming up with these weapons. You don't need to be rich to be creative. And, you look at Edison, you look at almost all of the famous inventors. They were not necessarily rich men when they came up with their first designs. And it's just simply, though, that this new high-speed missile that they've got, if they've got nuclear weapons on it, they're violating the law of outer space. And that's one of the worst things that I can imagine is that back in, I'm trying to think if it was during Clinton or if it was
David, slow down here. I want to ask you a question. Okay. I know about the law of outer space, but I thought that was pretty much rescinded back during Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative because a lot of the weapon systems they were planning to put up there into space carried nuclear warheads or nuclear power.
Right, yeah. Well, and even the spy satellites violate the law of outer space. Basically, it was that they didn't want to put immaturity and violence into outer space. You don't want outer space pirates attacking whole worlds. And the idea that we would be allowing...
We're wandering off into some extreme speculation here. Getting back on down to Earth here, I think Donald Trump is kind of like Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover was blamed for the Depression of the 1930s, but the reality is Hoover did not create the Depression. It was created for him, and I think that's what's going on with Donald Trump. Trump doesn't have anything to work with. That's the real problem. We're all broke. They can talk about raising taxes all they want. There just isn't anything else out here. When you've got 90 million Americans unable to find work, they're obviously also not paying taxes. And this GOP tax bill, it's not helping middle America. It was not intended to. It's just another giveaway to the ultra-rich to let them keep more of their money. Okay?
Sure, yeah, there's a certain amount to that. I've talked to you about the LIBOR scandal, right? LIBOR?
We've covered LIBOR. We've covered a lot of these banking scandals as well. Anyway, listen, David, sure. I got callers waiting on the line, and I'll let you have a
that's fine.
Time.
Yeah, it's just LIBOR is the big picture. The idea that the interest rates would have been set from London is such a fraud. Why would America allow London to set our interest rates?
David, I need to let you go. Thank you very much. Let's switch over to Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I'm glad Clay is doing well.
Yes.
Very happy about that. Yeah, listen, I want to call President Trump the Godfather, okay? Because he's an excellent businessman. He knows what he's doing. I have a lot of faith in him. It's okay if Russia comes in a little bit in the Middle East. They're going to go bankrupt. Same with China. Okay, give them a little piece of the Middle East. Both are going to go bankrupt. And Trump is going to just pull out little by little, and you'll see if he's going to save America. Okay, thank you.
Well, I would like to see that happen. First of all, I don't see Russia going bankrupt anytime soon because Putin basically took control of their central bank to turn Russia's currency back to being a public utility. China has been hit very hard because as the American economy has declined, we were one of China's biggest export customers, and we're just not buying anymore. But the reality is, whatever Donald Trump's intentions may be, he is being blocked and paralyzed by everybody around him. It is becoming very, very obvious that institutional Washington, D.C. hates him for being an outsider. They hate him because it proves they're losing control of the election process and the American people. And there was that article we talked about earlier. He and his family are being punished for the crime of having defeated Hillary Clinton. And I think that's really what's going on. I wish Trump would put on his presidential brass knuckles and start getting some stuff done. I think he's being a little too sensitive to the media perceptions of him. He campaigned on this idea that the corporate media was lying anyway, and none of us are listening to the corporate media. Donald Trump needs to listen to the independent media to find out what's really going on with the American people. Anyway, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we're going to get on back to some of the news. Getting on back to Israel, apparently Israeli economist Shir Hever has gone public, and this is in the IsraelPalestineNews.org website, and basically saying that according to the numbers he's been able to find, 78% of the humanitarian aid intended for Palestinians ends up in Israel. 78%. They're making money off the occupation. The harder they crush down on the Palestinians, the more people are sending money to Palestine, and the Israelis are just grabbing it. 78%. Now, pressure is continuing to mount on Netanyahu, which may be why he and Trump are thinking about just hauling off and attacking Iran as a distraction. But Nir Hefetz, Prime Minister Netanyahu's spin doctor and confidant, is now saying he's going to hand over recordings of Netanyahu and his wife Sarah as part of a deal with police to turn state's evidence in the bribery case involving the Bezek telecom giant and the Walla news site. And apparently Netanyahu found out about that while he was at the White House. I imagine that must have been a colorful moment. Okay, the United States has just extended the illegal unilateral sanctions on Russia and Venezuela. And Trump apparently on Friday did this, citing the 1976 National Emergencies Act. In other words, Russia's prosperity and Venezuela's attempt to break free of the dollar represent threats to the United States order. Remember what that general said the other day? Russia is threatening America's ability to dominate the world. I'm pretty sure the world doesn't really want to be dominated by anybody except their own internal government, their own people. So apparently the White House cited conditions in Ukraine as an unusual and extraordinary threat to national security and foreign policy of the United States. It's not a threat to the national security. It is a threat to the foreign policy, which is to expand the U.S. hegemonic domination of the world. And Trump apparently sent this letter extending the sanctions following U.S. approval of Javelin anti-tank missiles and launchers to Ukraine. So who's causing all this violence and war in the world? It is the United States of America, just stirring up a mess just to make a fast buck. Now, as I mentioned to that caller before, Canada is a top exporter of steel and aluminum to the United States, and they're absolutely flabbergasted by Trump's new tariff, because Trump did not direct that tariff at specific countries. He simply said, yeah, we're going to put a tariff on aluminum and steel to allow American producers to have a competitive advantage. And I understand that that is something that would really be nice to have, but tariffs are not the right way to do it. First of all, our steel belt is the rust belt now. The way you become competitive in the world is not by tariffing and protectionism, because that's a short-term fix only. You develop products, you make the best of what you make, and the world would be willing to come and buy it even at inflated prices. That's how you do it. At the end of World War II, part of the booming 1950s was based on the fact that most of the rest of the First World had their industrial bases bombed into rubble. That didn't happen in the U.S. And so as nations were rebuilding their industry, they had to come to the United States for machine tools and ball bearings and all kinds of stuff, and it was a booming economy. That, together with the Bretton Woods Agreement, the money was just pouring into the country. But instead of spending that money to invest in better products and better processes, certainly over the last 30 years, it's just been squandered. And they shipped off our manufacturing overseas and said, we're just going to be the bankers to the world. But the world doesn't want to have the U.S. as their bank. Now, China is vowing to work with other nations to counter the Trump tariffs, and basically saying that they're going to work to safeguard their interests and defend the world trade order. They do not want the United States to try and dominate the world economy. But the tariffs are actually going in the wrong direction. It's going to cut the United States off from participating in that global economy. I'm sure that the aluminum and steel producing nations are going to find other customers, especially with looming war on the horizon. I sometimes have to wonder how many people in Washington, D.C. are on prescription antidepressants because the quality of thinking that is coming out of our government is abysmal. Is Trump on these meds? Maybe that's why it's so easy for his opponents to talk him into making these policy changes. We might see the downfall of the United States of America and ultimately learn it was because we drugged ourselves into destruction. Now, China is doing it the right way, so to speak. Another article out of Global Research. China seeks global leadership through economic means rather than through war and conquest. Now, China has a reputation for mass-produced goods. It has shifted lately to put the emphasis on quality. They want to be the best at making things. And they make some good stuff. They make the iPhones, for example. Can't make the iPhone here in the United States of America. We've forgotten how. Or those people who knew how have already been lured to other countries. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the economic news. Now, David Morgan is out there saying that gold could be headed to $10,000 per ounce as the U.S. dollar continues to devalue relative to other currencies around the world. And part of a trade war is to push the value of the currency lower to gain a competitive edge on imports. Most people intuitively assume that you want your currency to be worth more. And certainly as a private citizen you do. You want to be able to buy more with the money that you have. But on a national economy dealing with import and export, a trade war actually drives the value of the currencies down. And he's out. Peter Schiff is out there saying America can't win a trade war. And I'm in agreement on that one. And the sad reality is that if we lose a trade war, it's going to morph into a real war. We all know it's coming. I've spent the last 2 decades trying to head off this insanity, and clearly I have failed. It is coming. It's just a matter of when. I was in the store the other day, and in the checkout line was a Navy guy right behind me. And I turn around to him, and I just say with a serious face, when does the war start? And he just looked at me just as seriously, and he said, any day. Everybody knows it's coming. Now, there's another little article out of Goldcore. Everybody likes to talk about gold this and gold that, but apparently silver is outperforming gold going forward. And we've seen this before because we know that the central banks are trying to depress the price of gold because they want people to keep their money in the savings accounts. They want people to keep their money in the stock market to keep that pumped up. They don't want people going to alternative stores of value, especially ones that they can't get the bankers can't get their hands on. But in the rush over manipulating gold, they've pretty much ignored silver, and it's actually done very, very well. So if you want to get into storing some of your wealth in metal, silver might be the way to go. And something you might want to consider is what's called the junk silver, which you can buy in bulk, even on eBay. And these are the pre-1964 coins that had real intrinsic metallic value to them, made out of silver, made out of real nickel, made out of real copper, because not only does it represent a store of wealth, but following the collapse of the U.S. and its economy, it is a readily recognizable unit of currency that we can all use to trade amongst ourselves. Another story over at governmentslaves.info. Thousands more stores are on the 2018 Retail Apocalypse Death List. Abercrombie & Fitch, 60 more stores are charted to close. Aerosols, only 4 of their 88 stores are remaining open. American Apparel has filed for bankruptcy. All stores are closed. BCBG, 118 stores. BB is history. All 168 stores have now closed. Bon-Ton filed for Chapter 11, closing 48 stores. The Children's Place, hundreds of stores by 2020. More on this list when we come back from station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about retail Mageddon. And the list of store closings this year, it's shocking. CVS has started closing some of their stores. They have thousands of them, but they're starting to shut them down. Foot Locker closing 110 stores. Guess 60 stores. Gymboree 350 stores will close. H.H. Gregg, all 220 stores are closing. The company is filing for bankruptcy. J. Crew closing 50 stores instead of the original 20 they announced. J.C. Penney has closed 138 stores, and they plan to turn all the remaining ones into toy stores. The Limited, all 250 retail locations have been closed and they've gone digital in an effort to remain in business. I think that J.C. Penney one, where they're going to turn some of their stores into toy stores, they know what's coming for Toys R Us. Macy's is going to close 7 more stores. More than 5,000 employees will be laid off. Michael Kors, 125 stores. Payless, 800 stores this year, filed for bankruptcy. Radio Shack, more than 1,000 stores have been shut down this year. I didn't even think they were still around. Route 21 closing 400 stores. Sears, Kmart, 300 locations. Toys R Us have filed for bankruptcy. No store closures announced yet. And they're trying to say the stores will remain open. Wet Seal, all 171 stores will soon be closed. So don't tell us the economy is doing well. It very obviously is not. People don't have money to go down to the stores and buy the stuff these stores are selling. Now, they're all trying to blame online sales like Amazon and so forth and so on. But online sales like Amazon, as much money as Amazon is making, it still really only accounts for 2 to 3% of consumer spending. Now, Gibson Guitar is looking at bankruptcy. They're starting to lay off their employees, another iconic name in this country. Over at United Airlines, they have ended their policy of giving employees who hit key goals a $300 bonus. Management comes in and says, we need you to do so much of this, and if the employee gets there, he gets a $300 bonus, except that's stopped. United has replaced this with a lottery, meaning employees who meet their goals are entered in a lottery that has a single quarterly grand prize of $100,000. They can also win one of 10 Mercedes-Benz, one of 20 $20,000 vacations, one of 30 $10,000 vacations, one of 300 $5,000 bonuses, or one of $1,000 $2,000 bonuses. And this is going to save United Airlines millions of dollars. As generous as those prices are, you need to remember United has 89,000 people working for them, which means most of those 89,000 won't get anything for meeting their goals. That may backfire on them tremendously. Okay, before we get into the news about immigration in Europe and so forth, I want to back on up here. Remember how I've been saying that this Russia hacked the DNC story doesn't stand up because the timestamps on the file show they had to be copied to a flash drive. So now the story has changed. Christopher Steele has now come on out and said that the DNC emails were stolen by a Russian agent within the Democratic Party. And they're probably going to try and dump this on Seth Rich, who cannot speak in his own defense. It's a Russian agent inside the Democratic Party. Okay, common sense time. Let us stipulate for a moment that Russia did hack the DNC emails, or they had an agent inside who copied all those files onto a flash drive. Why would they take them to WikiLeaks? There's a fabulous amount of blackmail information in there that would allow Russia to covertly control the Democratic Party for decades to come. It's a little bit of common sense I want to think about right there. Now, Italy just had their elections, and the Eurosceptic parties basically cleaned up, and all these European Union bigwigs are just being silent because the Italian voters just showed open contempt for the Brussels project here. Now, there's a case coming up in the Supreme Court, and it's basically opening the door for more refugee problems. And the idea being that if the Supreme Court finds that Sharia supremacism equals Islam equals religion, equals immunity from governmental protective measures, then they can come and go as they will. Because of that First Amendment, the government's not allowed to interfere with a religion. So what we have here is a Supreme Court that could conceivably declare that jihadis are protected by the First Amendment because of their religion, and just open the door to letting them come on in. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Now, down in San Diego, there is this illegal alien from Mexico, and he pled guilty in a San Diego courtroom. He stole an American's identity, and he pocketed $361,000 in government benefits over a 37-year span. Now, there's another court case coming up that might have some serious ramifications, and it has to do with a monument, the 90-year-old Peace Cross, and the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals on Thursday refused to revisit an October decision that declared the Peace Cross was unconstitutional because it rests on public property. I get sick and tired of seeing all this thing about, oh, you can't have Christian symbols on public property, and yet every holiday season you see menorahs and dreidels and everywhere. Here's the real sticking point. If this court decision stands, it could result in all of the memorial crosses being banned from all the national cemeteries, like Arlington. That's public property. And there's row on row of crosses, and yes, there's a few Stars of David. What are they going to do? Just go on in and chop those all off? You can see how ridiculous this could be taken to an extreme. All right, let's talk about the Oscars. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but obviously last night was the big party. And prior to the Oscars actually getting underway, there were 3 billboards popped up in Los Angeles blasting Hollywood. One billboard said, "We all knew and still no arrests." The second one said, "Name names on stage or shut the heck up." The third one said, "And the Oscar for the biggest pedophile goes to." Now, this may be a reference to the movie 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, and I forget the name of the state that it's in there. And it's a good movie. Claire and I actually watched it, and it picked up 2 Oscars for Best Actress and for Best Supporting Actor. And it's a tremendous script. I don't know why the script didn't win. They had 7 nominations, though. What's really interesting, again, more liberal hypocrisy on display. The celebrities are up there pushing gun control, surrounded by a wall of 500 armed officers. Remember that photo that surfaced of Ellen DeGeneres last week? She's at an anti-gun rally, and she's got 6 armed security guards around her. Now, I think America's getting sick and tired of Hollywood hypocrisy because this year's Oscars had the lowest ratings ever. I didn't watch the Oscars. I haven't for a lot of years, ever since Stargate got shafted by the Blue Ribbon Committee here. Now, a while ago, there was this gentleman, Frederick DeMond Scott, 22-year-old Burger King employee, and basically was out on social media saying all white people should be killed. And it turns out he was taking his own advice. He's now been charged in the murder of 6 white people. They were all shot. They were all middle-aged. They were all white. That's how dangerous this racist thing is getting. They're actually convincing black people that they have some kind of a right of revenge for slavery. And of course, Maxine Waters is pandering to that. Vote the Democrats into the House. We'll give you money. Where are they going to get the money? From the white people. What's happening? What happened in Zimbabwe, what is happening right now, this moment in South Africa, could actually happen here, where the government comes on in and says, we're just going to take stuff away from white people and give it to the black people. That's how serious this is going to be. Up in Washington, D.C., there's been a big scandal in terms of fraud being committed by the schools themselves to enable more of their students to graduate, even though they don't actually meet the requirements. Apparently, there's been a lot of absences, a lot of truancy rate. Following the investigation, the D.C. high school graduation rate, which had been at 73%, and even that is pretty bad, dropped to 48%. 2%. That shows you why our educational system isn't working, which is why, in turn, we don't have the trained talent pool to compete in a global marketplace. We just don't. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Bob in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind is you're incorrect about the silver. The ratio right now is 80 to 1. That is very historically high, so like you're saying, apparently silver has done quite well. Where are you getting that from?
The article is linked to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. I've already deleted it from my talking points, so I
okay,
can't
well,
get
that's fine. But, Michael, I mean, here's the thing. I think most of you talkers, your filters are clogged. You take in so much information that it's time to change the filter. And I think you guys need to take a step back because, number one, look at your life. Look how it's been a failure. You know, everything's so terrible.
Bob. Okay, Bob, we're going to let Bob go. Bob's just coming on in to rant and rave. Now, again, what we report here is stuff that is coming out from industry experts with their own websites. And you can look at whatreallyhappened.com. We link to the original sources so you can verify it for yourself. Anyway, now, getting on back to the real world. Apparently, there is now a move in several states to declare pornography a public health risk. And like other declared threats to public health, such as alcohol and tobacco, they're not talking about a ban, they're talking about a tax. Rhode Island has a bill that would charge residents $20 to unblock porn. It's just another money-making scam. It really is. Now, here's an interesting story, and probably because this is what I grew up with. Over in London, the young people are starting to get very concerned about plastic pollution. And by the way, Sir Richard Attenborough did a wonderful episode of Blue Planet 2, really talking about how bad it is. And so apparently young people are now demanding milk companies to go back to the days of the glass milk bottle, which means milkmen and now milkwomen will be delivering the dairy to the homes and then picking up the empties and taking them back. And that is pretty much what I grew up with as well. So I think it's a good idea. I do believe in recycling. It's never really penciled on out, but there is too much plastic in this world. There's no question about that. Somebody actually wrote on in and said, we don't need to have steel and aluminum for the cars. We can make them out of plastic. And yes, some cars already do have body panels that are made out of plastic. Somebody else wrote on in and said, you can actually make a car body out of hemp. And apparently there's a way to process it where it's very strong and rigid. The downside of that is, how are you going to grow that much hemp? Where are you going to grow that much hemp to supply the automobile industry? Now, Gateway Pundit is a website that we go to an awful lot, and Facebook has just basically banned them because of their conservative beliefs. The purge is definitely on. Facebook and Twitter have altered their platforms to prevent Gateway Pundit stories from being shared, and now they're just completely banned. CNN has started calling, and for lack of a better word, harassing advertisers on Alex Jones' InfoWars YouTube channel. And basically ads like Nike, Acer, 20th Century Fox, Paramount Network, Mormon Church, Moen, Expedia, Alibaba, HomeAway, NRA, Honey, Wix, and ClassPass. And the article says that because of CNN's contact with them, they've suspended their ads. They're probably afraid that CNN is going to do a story saying that Nike is supporting these dangerous truth websites. They won't call them a truth website. Fake news websites here. And YouTube has hit InfoWars with a third strike and taken them down. Remember, they had one, then they had two, and then public pressure, YouTube pulled one back. Now they did two in a row, 3 strikes, and they're out. And so there's articles all over saying this may be the last video of Alex Jones on YouTube. And this is simply not right. We're supposed to have freedom of speech and the freedom to peacefully assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. And where we peacefully assemble is not defined. So whether it's Facebook or Twitter, if it's a peaceful assembly, it's protected by the First Amendment. Now, I know Twitter's being sued by some freedom of speech lawyers, and I hope they win. Meanwhile, I would encourage people to leave these obviously compromised social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, so forth, and start with some of these new up-and-coming social media platforms that are protecting free speech and seizing the opportunity to displace these so-called giants. Mike Adams' YouTube channel has been taken down. Ryan Dawson's YouTube, they took it down, deleted everything. It's just this complete censorship going on. Apparently, Twitter suspends a user for calling Maxine Waters a crazy old lying lunatic in a bad wig. And this was in response to Maxine Waters continuing to insist that anybody who's questioning the government about anything must be a Russian bot. We're all supposed to be Russian bots. Russia, 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 Russia. Now, over at Google Shopping, they removed all shopping search items with the word gun in them, which took out water guns, Guns N' Roses, burgundy, paint guns. Now, Google's backed off on this. It was a huge embarrassment, and that's now reinstated. But the censorship rampage is out of control. And apparently, they're taking down videos about things like donkeys, chickens, and home gardening. They're not going video by video to see if it offends their community standards. They're targeting conservatives, is what they're doing. And this seems to be part of a larger program of simply slapping down conservatism in general. Now, what's really interesting, of course, the liberals are out there saying, well, these are private companies. You know, the YouTube has a right to discriminate based on politics. Aren't these the same people who, like, excoriated a baker who refused to bake a wedding cake for a gay couple? It's another case of liberal hypocrisy. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Francis in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha to you both.
Aloha.
A few points for you. One, did you have a hand in the working on the film Stargate that you're thinking that they got kind of the shafted or whatever as far as a Academy Award?
Yeah, I did work on Stargate, and what the Blue Ribbon Committee does, it's all politics. They try and decide what films might be able to financially exploit an Oscar. And unfortunately, the company that produced Stargate was in serious trouble, so they threw us out. And Speed, the one about the bus, won the Oscar for that year. And ever since then, I have no tolerance for the Oscars. We got to take a break for commercials. Do you have anything else, Francis?
Several.
All right, talk to you later. Okay, you'll hold. All right, we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Francis in North Carolina. And Francis, you said you had something else you wanted to share with us.
Yeah, 2 quick points. One, you said about all the various businesses closing down and so forth because of the economy being really sucky in the toilet and that type of thing. Well, that would certainly explain why it would be a natural notch taken out of people having their own individuality as far as their shopping tastes or habits are concerned, and being narrowed down so they only have a few choices for that matter. So that tends to take a notch on that. And lastly, as I learned that the Health Ranger, his site was, well, the YouTube channels or whatever he had up video-wise as far as health information is concerned, I was stunned to hear about that because, quite frankly, I don't really see where he was basically expressing disinformation or trying to sell anything as far as, I guess they call it spamming, is concerned, because basically the only thing he was doing was primarily giving information that was helpful to people so they could make their own mind up as to what they do or do not do to help their own lives.
Well,
But,
that's why he's a
it's
threat. That's why he's a threat. I mean, this purge is not just of conservative. They're going after anybody who's a threat to the existing order. And right now, the medical industrial complex is getting very, very nervous that people don't just blindly trust them any longer. And so, you know, there websites that question vaccine safety, or they're going to be attacked. People who keep putting out these stories about adverse reactions to vaccines, they want that all to go away.
Well, you know what? They should have thought about that before they started polluting the environment and the people that are being given this garbage to start with. But quite frankly, still, I'm wondering if he's going to even bother to appeal, which he can do, this decision that of it being harmful to community guidelines or whatever have you, which I think is a bunch of tripe to start with, and actually fight for the right to be able to post that information for people that they can help themselves with, for that matter. Now, if the medical industrial complex has a canary, tough noodles. They should have thought about that before they ever started spewing this garbage into
They just wanted to make money. This is a multi-generational thing, where, you know, somebody way back then said, "Oh, vaccines are a great way to make money." So we just got to come up with more vaccines, and we get the government to force the American people to take them, and we'll all get very rich in the process. And because vaccines are indemnified from civil litigation, they just, anything they can think of, they put in those needles. And now they realize they're in serious trouble. Their answer is to basically silence anybody who doubts the safety and efficacy of their product. They don't want that to get on out there. They don't want the American people to be fully informed on any issue so that they can make such decisions. They want an obedient herd of sheep who will let them stick them with needles, who will eat the food they're told to eat, and just do as they're told. That's the direction we're heading.
Well, true. However, mind you one thing, though, at least when they were first doing vaccines decades ago, they were actually using a dead virus to do that with.
Yes.
The past 2 to 3 decades, from about the 80s or 90s up to now, they've been using a live virus, which has really caused a lot of problems. If they had stuck to the procedure they had before, we wouldn't be having the issue of problems. And quite frankly, I think that's a genocidal engineering that they have decided to launch onto, as well as the fact they're making money off of it hand and foot. Their karma's going to hit them if they even don't even believe in karma. It's going to bite them in the tail. So, which I'm looking forward to. Have a great one.
All right, well, thanks an awful lot. I mean, the big problem with the live virus vaccines, supposedly the viruses have been attenuated, weakened. So they're not supposed to actually cause an illness. They're simply there so that when the adjuvants forms an immune response, the immune system sees the virus and says, oh, this is what I have to go after. And, of course, along the way, we become violently allergic to peanuts and various other side effects. But again, because the goal is to get to market first and make a lot of money, they've been very, very reckless with this technology. And there is no incentive for them to be more careful because vaccine makers, like computer software makers, are protected from civil litigation. And that is a trend that, unfortunately, is starting to spread to other product lines. And it just illustrates the fact that we have descended from a republic into economic fascism. And that's really exactly where we are. Okay. Basically, this is an embarrassment. All the censoring of conservatives and health information, Facebook actually sent out a survey on how users felt if an adult man was sending sexual messages to a 14-year-old. And they've dragged it back now and realized it was a huge mistake. But look at the double standard. Facebook is banning posts questioning the official story of everything, but thinks it might be okay to allow dirty old men to ask children for naked photos. Right. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And let's go to the phones. Sherry in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. I know it's okay to express my grievances.
what bothers us. We're covered for that.
Yes.
You know, or you wouldn't be here. And I want to tell Bob, that I'm sorry if I sound smarmy and ingratiating, but you're the best comprehensive news I have ever heard. Now, I like Daniel because he and I kind of see the same thing the same way. But you are the news guy, and I'm glad to be part of it and be able to get your show even if it's an hour. Okay, here it is. Anything against race? See, we've just entered into some new thing here. Anything against race, sexual propensity, creed, party affiliation, anything anyone says about that, watch out, I think. And what you put in writing, of course, is always, you know, legally challenging. So expressing our grievances, I think we're okay. So you should be able to be around for a long time, I hope. Now, my iBook today that's very old, I have a new Mac Air, MacBook Air, is it called? Mm-hmm. I think that I don't use very much because you have to buy more apps for it than the old iBook had. It gave me a warning today that I need to familiarize myself with the new word guidelines or something. And this was kind of frightening because they have crossed my threshold. I have a right to my papers. I have a right to privacy of my papers and persons and things. They infiltrated my iBook now, my old one that I always draft on, because if I want to write a letter, I can kind of draft it and fiddle with it until I'm ready to write it up or type it up or whatever. I'm going to be watched. There's a new 5G millimeter wave wireless technology they came to the tower behind, north of me, and they came up, and there's this big, fat, black pipe going up to this Verizon tower, and now this 5G, which is a lot stronger than what we had before, is now beaming out over all of us, and it even hit my little old iBook. So I'm going to be really careful what I say. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say anything against, anything that's politically incorrect. I'm going to play their game because I don't want to be hauled off somewhere. And but it's happened now. I mean, it felt kind of weird today because this is what it would have been like, I think, maybe under Mitt. I'm saying maybe under Mitt.
Well, let me get you two observations. Okay, first of all, if you're connecting to the internet, it doesn't matter whether it's 5G, 4G, or dial-up modem. Yeah, the internet is being surveilled. There's no question about it. But as I mentioned in my opening dialogue about getting our new Hyundai, the databases are worthless because my wife, 68-year-old choir director, got a hit from the Office of Foreign Asset Control, and we were able to call and get it all sorted out. And they admitted to me that the system is oversensitive, and 99 out of 100 times it's an error when somebody gets flagged. And that tells us that all these government databases, it's just a way of shoveling money at political cronies who own these database companies. They don't really work. And computer engineers have been talking about how the NSA is supposedly copying everything that everybody does around the world. That's too much data because data is linearly additive, but correlating it is an unlimited mathematical expansion, and there isn't enough computer power on Earth to be able to do that in a timely manner.
So we don't have to be so careful?
No, I don't think you have to be. I mean, if you're a private citizen, they're not really paying attention to you. It's the people who are visible publicly, like an Alex Jones or like yours truly or like Mike Adams. We're the ones under attack. We're seen as a threat. But ordinary citizens, I would say, just live your life. And don't forget, under Nazi Germany, they deliberately tried to sell this myth that the Gestapo was hearing everything and seeing everything, that they could virtually read your mind as a way of scaring people into silence. And unfortunately, it did work. The German people stayed silent no matter how bad things got, and they wound up losing their country.
Well, how did they get into my old antiquated iBook? I mean, how did they get in there to leave me this message?
Well, we're not sure where the message came from. It could have been generated by an app. Are you telling me that your old iBook is not connected to the internet?
No, nothing in this house is connected to the internet. My understanding is that when they put this thing up Because I went out, when they were digging the ditch, I went outside and said, what are you doing? And they said, well, we're running this fiber optic cable up to the Verizon tower. And I thought, uh-oh. Well, they evidently got it finished, because all of a sudden there's this wireless technology that just, it sort of like zaps into everything, and it's come across my threshold into my little iBook.
Okay,
it was
Sherry,
always totally private.
Sherry, I got to be very honest. I think that warning was from an internal app, because unless your iBook has a Wi-Fi port in it, and yes, they can override the off switch on the Wi-Fi port. But if it's not connected to the internet, if it doesn't have Wi-Fi, it has to be an internal app. And I think you need to relax a little bit, okay?
I know what it is. I had my iBook updated, and ever since then, I had all these weird apps on there, and I threw out most of them because they were scary, and I didn't understand them. So that's probably it. I updated that. I should have left it as antiquated as it was.
That
I think
certainly would have been the
better.
case. I mean, I'm missing Windows XP.
Yes.
I'm tolerant of Windows 7. Let's see. Okay, I'm getting a message from the control room. It looks like the Alex Jones YouTube channel it's either still up or it's been restored. So we may be getting them back down. Sherry, I need to let you go. We got other callers waiting on the line right now. So thank you very much for the phone call, and let's switch over to Jeff in Georgia. Aloha, Jeff. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, good to talk to you. Two things. One is free speech. It's a human right, and the same powers that are going after that free speech did that 100 years ago in Soviet Union. 100 years ago they outlawed anti-Semitism as a crime punishable by death, because a lot of the Russian people knew that it was Jewish oligarchs that had actually overthrown the Tsar. But I want to say this, Michael. Saturday I was listening to RBN, and I heard something that was very encouraging. A person called in and said there needs to be a jubilee. Yes, there needs to be a cancellation of national debt, not only of this country, but of many countries. There's $70 to $100 trillion in debt, and when you believe that most of those loans to those governments was by banks using fractional banking, meaning they did not have nearly the equity to make those loans, governments have a right to legitimately cancel that debt. And when we cancel that debt, you're going to see that power, that banking oligarchy that's trying to limit our free speech and trying to racialize everything. We have to nurture race relations. Spain, 900,000 years ago, had people living there, and 500,000 years ago they had Neanderthals, and 40,000 years ago the Neanderthal went away. He interbred with the Cro-Magnon.
It's actually thought they interbred with the Cro-Magnon, and certainly looking at some of our politicians, I would say that the Neanderthal traits are still in the gene pool.
Yes, but what I'm saying is this, Michael, is that we have to nurture racial relations. We have thousands and thousands of years of separation, and the banking oligarchy is going to create strife. They control the wealth. They have a massive apparatus.
Yes.
And they're a cartel. And we're making progress, but the reason you're seeing a lot of stress out there is they're coming at us hard because there's a global awareness, and they're going to be going after the banking that's trying to run the world, that's trying to illegitimately run republics. That cannot happen. That goes against our natural. That's a definition of a nation
I tend
state.
to agree with you. I tend to agree with you. But as long as the bankers are willing to share some of that ill-gotten gain with the politicians will protect the bankers. It's been that way for 100 years since the creation of the Federal Reserve. And occasionally you'll have a courageous voice like Ron Paul stand up and say, we need a full audit of the Federal Reserve to see just how much real wealth they've accumulated off the backs of the American workers. And there's always opposition in Congress. Oh, leave them alone, leave them alone. And because politicians tend to be corrupt. The only option we have right now is to just wait patiently for the system to tear itself apart, because we're seeing it start to happen now.
Michael, what I think we can do. 55 years ago, Martin Luther King marched nonviolently to end black people being second-class citizens. We could unite with multi-race, multi-ethnic to cancel the debt. We could get out and we could start marching to do this, and it would happen. It will happen because once people are made aware that these loans to governments were made illegitimately through fractional banking.
Well, it's worse than that. It's worse than that. The central banks just make the money out of thin air. There isn't any equity backing any of it. There's this double shuffle swindle where the Treasury prints up a Treasury bond that represents basically the future enslavement of the American worker. They send this piece of paper over to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve creates up a bunch of other ink and paper to then loan into circulation at interest or to send to the government. But again, they're charging interest on money that is created out of thin air. It is a legalized counterfeiting operation, and they've been playing this scam on planet Earth for 300 years, and it is time for it to come to an end. Jeff, I need to let you go. We've got another caller on the line. We're almost to the end of the program here.
You.
So let's switch on over to Thomas from Victorville, California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Thomas, first-time caller. I was just calling to add a little bit of something maybe to the comments about Damon Scott, Frederick Damon Scott, I believe it is, the one shooting. Okay. And it's sort of piggybacking off of what the gentleman said, your previous caller right here, about nurturing race relations. I read an account in the Kansas City paper, I think it was, or online, someplace, about Damon Scott's mother stating that there was a schizophrenia issue in the background. I don't think he had been diagnosed, but his brother had been diagnosed that way, and she was saying, he was a bit of him getting arrested for this actually was the best thing that could happen. It's not the best thing that could happen for the people that got killed. I got that. But I just think it's important to put that little caveat out there in the public sphere as well, that, this guy had some issues. Black people, the ones that I know anyway, the ones that I've known all my life, are not sitting around planning killing a bunch of white people. I promise you that.
Well, no, I believe you. I believe you. This is an individual, and he may have been schizophrenic, which means he was probably on this prescription psychiatric medication. Here's a question that is worth asking right now. And setting aside the fact that the psychiatric industry is trying to define all behaviors as mental illness, looking at the real mental illness issue, the numbers have been going up. The per capita incidence of these kinds of serious mental aberrations is increasing. Is it the result of the environment? Is it the result of some of these chemicals that are getting dumped into our food without being fully checked on out? Because it does seem like there are a lot of crazy people out there right now.
All of the above and even more. I mean, our Hollywood was celebrated last night, but come on, let's look at the product that's being put out. Okay, so there's that. We get this stuff at a young age, and at the end of the day, I mean, I can't manage it myself. I'm like 60 years old. It's hard. Imagining what someone who doesn't have the before or the history of just how this process works is frightening. So yes, we are at war. So we have to understand at the same time that, and then it comes in all different kinds of shapes and forms because they're very powerful. So just to be brief though, to cut it off, I know you got to go. I wish everybody just it understands. Always suspect the usual suspects first. And then go from there. Usual suspect being so-called powers that shouldn't be.
Well, I question your comment that they're very powerful and they're very strong, because if they were, they wouldn't be acting the way they are. They wouldn't be trying to shut down the independent media. They wouldn't be trying to go for the cashless society. I see these as signs of extreme fragileness, both in the government and in the central banking system. They're stretched way too thin. And I think...
I back off of that.
Okay?
I back off of that. I would say that they're powerful. I'll say that they have a track record that's extremely frightening, though. So they need to be dealt with very cautiously.
Well, we're doing what we're doing. We're acting within the letter of the law, whereas obviously Facebook and Twitter and YouTube are not, because here in the independent media, we vow to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States from all threats, foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to same.
100%. So, but you know, Mike, I'm going to go because I don't want to take all your time. I just want to. I'm glad Claire is well too. Like I said, I'm a first-time caller. It's been an honor speaking with you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. And Claire's not all the way better. She's better. And again, even with the new Hyundai, Hawaii's roads are so bad and so full of potholes, it's actually getting in the way of her recovering fully. So it's just a never-ending circus. Anyway, thanks, Thomas. We're going to switch over to Dan in Washington State, and I'm probably going to have to take you through the commercial break, but what's on your mind, Dan?
I just disagree with you on tariffs. I think tariffs are the only way to bring jobs back. I think the theory that ingenuity and this and that, build the best product, has proven false over the past 50 years because they can build it for cheaper. And whatever we engineer better, they're just going to copy and produce it cheaper a year later.
They don't. Yeah, I know there's a big problem with copying over in China, but that's why I favor a renewed space program to leap us forward ahead of the rest of the world, the way the Apollo Moon program did that led to the 70s, 80s, and 90s tech boom. We did it before. We can do it again. Dan, I'm going to have to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And anyway, getting on back to the subject of the purge, the computer corporations' crackdown on conservative speech or speech that questions the official line on anything, including vaccines. And yet, they're actually out there saying, you know, it might be okay to let dirty old men ask children for naked pictures. Another story along that same line, over in the Daily Mail in Great Britain. Apparently, firms like Google and Facebook are profiting from the exploitation of young women who are smuggled into Great Britain and forced to work in what are called pop-up brothels. In other words, they'll open up a space, put a phony sign out front, but it's actually a sex club and massage parlor, and they'll run it for maybe a month or two, and then they'll shut it down and move again to stay ahead of the police. And they're using these internet sites like Google and Facebook to basically sell their wares. And apparently the British government is now considering new laws to make these corporate social media platforms liable when smuggling gangs use their websites to pimp their victims to men who pay for sex. So again, liberal hypocrisy, conservative speech, oh, we can't have that. Dirty old men and naked children, maybe. Prostitution, exploitation, yeah, no big deal. A story coming out of ZDNet.com. How long will your Apple device last? And apparently somebody has been doing a survey of the durability of the Apple products, including iPhones, iPads, Macs, Apple Watches, the iPod Touch. And they did a study between 2013 and today, and the average lifespan for your device is 4 years and 3 months. And that actually does line up with the business model of these companies that you upgrade your device every 5 years. You don't get to just buy it and use it for the rest of your life. It's planned obsolescence. They don't want to make money from you just once. They want to keep making money from you year after year after year after year. And I think smartphone technology has pretty much plateaued. In fact, it's gone a little ridiculous with Apple's facial scanner that doesn't really work. So how do you get people to keep on buying product when there really isn't any place to take them? The cameras are already excellent. The phones are very convenient. It's easy. You design them to not last very long at all. There used to be a video out there, I think it got taken down for copyright violation. It was called Pyramids of Waste or the Light Bulb Conspiracy, and it was an excellent, excellent documentary on how American businesses do not want to make quality products, because a product that never wears out or never breaks down is a business disaster. And finally, story over at motherboard.vice. Apparently, Israel has been soliciting zero-day exploits from American hackers. They're literally trying to hunt down these hackers and say, if you have any zero-day exploits, we will buy them from you. Okay, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Please stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots and lots of interesting things to share with you. We have to keep up the pressure on the corporate media, on the government. We have to keep pushing back peacefully, non-violently, but we just don't cooperate with them anymore. We don't listen to them anymore. We know they have been lying to us for our entire lifetimes to our detriment. So we'll be back tomorrow, and aloha, America.